in your mind, and the biggest one is yourself, right?
Yes.
You're the one that's always saying that you can't do something, you can't do this, you can't do that, or that you shouldn't do this, you should play the safe game. It's like, life ain't safe.
No, 100%, brother. You know, we hear those things from the closest people in our life, like all of our lives. You know, we hear those things like it's limiting beliefs. And so because we get to hear that all the time like a freaking record player, and as we go through that process and we're like living and we want to do something, that's the record playing in our paradigm. And so it takes us to be able to unlearn that and to go through the process to say, you know what, who the hell are you to tell me I cannot do something?
Bingo.
You know, and yet to have grace at the same time to say, you know what, they only saying that because they grew up in a generation where you really couldn't be a free thinker. You know, you couldn't be innovative. You rarely meet people that are millennials that are pretty limiting. You know, our people, we you know, especially the kids that are in high school right now, they are doing things that our parents could only dream of, and they're doing it in high school, and like their parents couldn't do it in their 50s. You know, and so being able to undo the limiting beliefs and reintroduce new principles and beliefs that can help us to transcend those limiting beliefs in a way that is loving and graceful and truthful and not based on ego and personal ambition. You know, we got to help out everybody, and it's not really an option.
Welcome back to Hawaii Real, everybody. I have with me brother Elijah Kala McShane.
Yo, aloha mai, aloha mai.
Elijah. Okay, so I gotta throw this out there because Elijah Kala McShane, when I was typing it into my phone, spell check, right? Spell check, stupid spell check. It put Elijah Kaka McShane. Kaka McShane. I was like, hey, no. You ever get that problem with like spell check?
Yeah, bro. You know, I try to do my best with how I communicate, you know, with people on how they use my name. Yeah. You know, because a lot of my life people called me Kayla and Kala, but it's Kala. Yeah. You know, the sun, or the day, which the sun in Hawaii, his name is actually Kane Hoalani. So yeah. So spell check is important. Yeah, spell check. It's like spell check. I never use the word duck. Stop. Of course. Okay? Yeah.
Flying duck, stupid duck. It's like, no, come on, I don't say duck that often.
Yeah, you.
All right. Elijah, you are the founder of Kingdom Health Foods. You brought with us today Kingdom Health. It's a little greens.
The Greens of Greatness.
Yeah, you're going to talk a little bit about this?
Yes. The Greens of Greatness was a product that I created about 2.5 years ago. The Greens of Greatness is actually a high-performance greens powder comprised of 15 superfoods, 8 different countries. And Kingdom Health, we actually kicked off with a total different mission. At that time that I was introducing Kingdom Health, I was actually in training to be a pastor. I was in training at Inspire Church here, you know, huge mega church. The senior pastor is Uncle Mike Kai, amazing church, amazing people. And I introduced this because of my whole history of health, wellness, and performance on the path of being a pro bodybuilder. Spent about 8.5 years in the process of being a pro bodybuilder. And so I had a lot of education and information on products and health and how to optimize humans. And I was going through a little bit of a process with, I've been a coffee drinker all of my life. Like, you know, I started drinking cappuccinos with me and my dad before school.
Yeah, I love coffee. I'm a big coffee drinker.
Yeah, man, you know, but, you know, I got exposed to just the history of coffee, you know, the process of coffee today and bulletproof coffee. And, you know, I realized that a lot of the coffees on our market is really, is bad for us. You know, there's a lot of chemicals, a lot of pesticides usage because the United States is one of the only countries that actually do not have any regulations on the quality of coffee. If I'm not mistaken, they could have changed it. But in that time, I was intaking coffee, and coffee would like super dehydrate me because it's a diuretic, you know, so I had a lot of brain fog. And I also always had a speech impediment. And so I would always see, yeah, man, I stuttered all of my life.
No.
You know, yeah, you know, just up until, you know, it put me on a process of really understanding myself to a higher level. And so I knew that I would take a greens drink every morning that had like 18 different superfoods that would help to fuel my body at an atomic level, and to help to feed my whole being and my cells. And then I would intake a coffee. And you know, the two things that were wrong was that when I would intake the greens drink, it didn't really always taste good, clumpy, didn't break down well. So it was a little bit hard to drink for a majority of people. And then I would drink a coffee, but the coffee would dehydrate me. and I would get brain fog that would eventually lead me to start stuttering because, yeah, it didn't do too well for my brain. And so I knew, I was like, you know what, I'm going to create a product to combine the both. And so I created Greens of Greatness that is a combination of both. It's 15 superfoods, as I said, 8 different countries, but there's also a hint of pure calf that is green coffee bean, so that the coffee beans aren't roasted. They're actually pure coffee bean. And these coffee beans, if I'm not mistaken, they come from either Ecuador or Guatemala. And after I introduced this product and how amazing it tastes, which everybody who is interested in Greens of Greatness, just please let me know. I'm an independent. I don't have it in retail right now. I'm not aiming to get into retail right now because this thing has to hold its own and people need to know the story. And so, yeah, it's a phenomenal product. The people in my family, like especially two of my parents and my gramps, he has had high cholesterol, high blood sugar, a lot of his life, all in my family, as in the Hawaiian community. Our health and wellness is not always the best, and 85% of Kanaka are pre-diabetic or already have high blood sugar, high blood pressure, and cancers. And so after he started taking this, he didn't really change too much stuff in his diet, but when he started taking Greens of Greatness, in 2 weeks, he went to the doctor and all of his levels, it all evened out and balanced out. And he was like, oh, it gotta be the Greens of Greatness.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's been pretty phenomenal, bro. Like, I take this about 2 times a day as you can, each bottle up to 60 servings. So if you only take once a day, that's 2 months worth.
Wow.
No? And it's a retail price of only like about $55,
That's not bad.
Yeah.
For 60 days.
Yeah. For 2 months worth. But for the people that are in my healing community and, people that I connect with, of course, I always give a friends and family discount of $44. It's an investment into our whole vision and our mission. And today, as I explained earlier, when I was in the process of being a pastor at that time, so currently I'm still kind of operating in that space, but I'm not in the Christian context, more so about healing Hawaii, healing our people through our ancestral practices and universal ancestral wisdom. This, our product and our company, Kingdom Health, is more focused on Hawaiian Kingdom Health and the health of our people. So
awesome, man. Awesome. Love hearing that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Especially because we all know, like, coffee's popular. Coffee's, we know what coffee does.
Yes.
And we know what coffee doesn't.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to drink coffee, like myself.
It's a massive stimulant.
Throughout the day.
Yeah.
Well, it also declines the more you use it.
Yeah, it
the
does.
more you need.
Yeah, it's like a drug.
Yeah, so I got to drink a lot of coffee.
Yeah.
just to kind of stay awake.
Implement this, brother. It's going to transform a lot of stuff for you, bro.
Roger. Yeah. All right. So you were talking about being your own host for Elijah McShane TV, and that's going to be on YouTube?
Yes. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be airing on TV as well on Olelo TV. Mm-hmm. My aim ultimately is to get picked up by either PBS or a public station that can produce high quality content to give to people. But it's going to be on YouTube, Vimeo, and all different on podcast platforms. Of course, on my Instagram platform, which is my main platform right now, at Elijah McShane TV. And we are going to be interviewing all of the highest minds that exist within the Hawaiian community to bring out ancestral consciousness, culture, and contribution to Hawaii, really beginning in our core understanding of who we are as Kanaka.
Beautiful. And just to keep going, man. Okay, so you're a Hawaiian ancestral healer.
Hi.
St. Louis grad.
Kanalui.
Yeah.
Kalaipoha.
Football player.
Yes.
And one of the big things that gravitated me towards you and bringing you on the show is you're a spoken word poet.
Yes.
And you posted a video on YouTube, and it was just like shocking that, yeah, we have a local Hawaiian brother like yourself that has such an influence and orator that you're able to do on that.
Yeah, it's super interesting because as I stated earlier, I had a speech impediment my entire life, and that really it catapulted me to having a better understanding of who I was, because I knew that I had to be able to overcome and to conquer this speech impediment, and I didn't really know how and where to go with that. So I got introduced to personal development pretty young. Got introduced to the books from Anthony Robbins, Tony Robbins, pretty young. I got exposed to Eric Thomas, exposed to Les Brown when I was about a freshman, and I really started going deep. And as I began to go through that, like, my main objective was to overcome my speech impediment.
And it's amazing. You've obviously done that.
Yeah.
There's none of that evidence right now.
Yeah.
It's like your flow is good.
It's the mastery of self. Yeah. And so as I began to get into the ancestral work and really understanding the essence of the masculine, the ku, and the hina, which is the essence of the divine feminine. When I started operating in the feminine, which helps me create a lot more, like a lot of the creative beings, they operate in that space because a lot of our musicians, a lot of our poets, they are healers. They can heal through their voice and through their consciousness. And so I started doing poetry when I was actually pretty young, but I always got teased for it. Like all of my first, like maybe 3 crushes that I had, I wrote music for them or I wrote poetry for them. And oftentimes it was amazing poetry, but it wasn't accepted and embraced because the consciousness just wasn't there in whoever I was delivering it to. And that's all fine. So I really put it to the side. But that art of telling stories.
So the girls you're talking poetry to, they're not receptive to your poetry? That's insane.
Yeah, it's tough, but it's as I understand it now, a lot of the females in our day, they actually operate a lot more in the masculine energy. And so to see that kind of stuff and to see a male to get into the feminine of who he is and to express his feelings, oftentimes it's kind of a turnoff. And that's why we actually see a lot of our pretty women, they actually go towards the bad boys because they are looking for more so of a masculine energy that is stronger than them, other than being able to reconnect and accept whatever energy comes to them. And a lot of our men today, especially in our Kanaka community, but all around, they're heavily masculine to the point where they become destructive,
right?
And so it leads to addictions, right? It leads to abuse. But a long story short, to encapsulate, I started doing poetry again about like a year ago, and it began really transforming me. I actually introduced the biggest inspiration for introducing poetry was to tell the stories of our people, and the Hawaiian people. And so on Thanksgiving this past year, which was on the 28th of November, which in Hawaii doesn't really have any relevance. It has a relevance to the history of the United States, but it's Hawaiian Independence Day is November 28th. 1843. And so I felt a huge call to, especially with all the things taking place on the Mauna, all the things taking place with the protests of the wind turbines. I got arrested twice, all kinds of things happening. I introduced a spoken word on top of iTunes and Spotify on Hawaiian Independence Day so that all of our children can really hear the story of who we are and what our Independence Day is really about. And so I started doing spoken word poetry, man. I got invitations to specific events and it really hit hard just because I've been speaking professionally since I was 18 as well. Even when I had my speech impediment, I've always wanted to just inspire and empower. And I found spoken word is one of the greatest ways to do that.
Okay, it's also a spoken word. You've also told me that you are the spokesperson for the Aloha Aina Party.
Aye.
That's a new political party here in Hawaii?
Yes, it's the newest political party here in Hawaii. It's the first Hawaiian political party that is ran through and by Hawaiians. Speaking Hawaiian is a nationality, and being Kanaka Maoli is the ethnicity. So a lot of the people that are involved, the co-founders are all Kanaka Maoli, and they are all also Hawaiian nationals. Because even before we became U.S. citizens, we were Hawaiian nationals through parentage and through ancestry. And so the Aloha Aina Party, extremely significant. Everybody knows about Prince Kuhio. A handful of people have heard of Wilcox, who these two men were chiefs in the Hawaiian kingdom and played a pivotal role in the time of the illegal overthrow of our queen. And these two men, with Prince Kuhio and Wilcox, they were the leaders of all the rebellions to restore the queen and the monarchy. And they were also the first two to become kind of statesmen in U.S. Congress. But these two men are like pretty much the Aloha Aina Party is the first political party since Prince Kuhio and Robert Wilcox. That's 108 years ago. That's a long time ago, 3 to 4 generations ago. And so bringing this new party into the forefront, our candidates are all being positioned. Everything is doing amazing. And, the inspiration of the Aloha Aina Party is a specific Hawaiian patriot. And he goes by the name of Kupuna James Keau'iluna Kaulia. His mo'opuna, his offspring, is the president of the Aloha Aina Party. So he's carrying on the torch of his grandfather to actually reinstate the Hawaiian kingdom, but to also be able to reinstate a political arm that can help our people, even if we are within the United States whole political system right now.
Right, because that's huge, right?
Yeah, it's huge. You know, being able to cooperate in a system that has been the main oppressor of not only us Kanaka, but almost all Aboriginal peoples that are under the oppression of this imperialistic system. You know, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Philippines, all in Guam, all these places that were occupied because of military in the time of the Spanish-American War. The main place, you know, the biggest military that exists on the planet is the Pacific Command, and the Pacific Command is stationed on Oahu. You know, about 8 military bases here, and almost 250,000 people that are either active reserve or guard in Hawaii. That is a lot, dude. You know, and because of that, we knew that we need to get into the government already.
Yes.
Yeah, with all the protests happening on, you know, with TMT up on the Mauna, the movement that sparked the Third Hawaiian Renaissance, our three founders knew that it's time to get into the races. And so we are in an actual political party now. We were confirmed on March 13th, 2020. Had a whole press conference.
Jesus, this is brand new.
It's brand new.
Brand spanking.
Yeah, but the introduction, the idea of the Alohaina Party actually started in 2015, if I'm not mistaken.
Brand new.
Still brand new. You know, yet the platform that we're creating is new options for people to look on. How can we maintain, how can we prosper and manage our land system, our people, our culture, in a way that is of Hawaiian consciousness, because we live in a place that is unlike any other place on the planet. And you cannot implement a political system, a governmental system, and an infrastructure system that is based on land masses when you're in the middle of the ocean. You know, our people prospered for 2,000 years. Only the past 100 years have we began to really fall. And it's because of this introduction that thinks that everything works if they use the iron fist, you know, and it doesn't happen like that. And so our party is here to really bring new educational approaches on how to build an infrastructure for all people to prosper. And we're doing a phenomenal job with that. So,
is the party also a stretch to get more Native Hawaiian voters to actually start voting?
Oh, 100%. Because if I'm not mistaken, with the 250,000 Hawaiians that live in Hawaii, Aboriginal Hawaiians that live in Hawaii, we only had about under 80,000 people that actually voted, or even less than that. And so we, yes, are pushing the Hawaiian vote because we know the power of the vote, and our queen also knew the power of our vote. But you know, because of our history, a lot of our people, they thought that, you know what, this system is so bossed up, I'm not even going to take part in voting. But if we can utilize our voice collectively, then we begin to realize, because of what took place up on the Mauna, that our collective effort can really begin transforming a governmental system as it did within our culture.
The Alohaina Party, I don't know all the details of their platform and whatnot, but I do know that they're trying to get the Native Hawaiians to educate themselves and to actually
activate
and vote, because voting it's a use of force.
Yes,
you are forcing, you're imposing your will upon the populace. People don't understand that, and when I heard about, you know, years ago, how the Native Hawaiians just didn't want to vote ever. Like, they've gone their entire lives living here, never voting, because they were always just disenfranchised. They think, you know, oh, why? It's, you know, it's going to be another Democrat. It's going to be another white person. It's going to be another Japanese person. You know, nothing's going to change. It's like, no, that's the wrong attitude. So I'm glad to hear that they actually come up with a platform and come up with a party that is going to influence Native Hawaiians to vote for candidates and actually push the platform that is going to be beneficial to Native Hawaiians.
Yes, no, 100%, brother. You know, but you know, it's a historical situation because, you know, in the time of the territory and the passing of the Statehood Act, you know, the passing of the Statehood Act was basically everybody that is a citizen of the territory of Hawaii will now become a citizen of the United States. But we couldn't vote. Us as Kanaka, or the people that were Hawaiian nationals, we weren't allowed to vote. And so the people that had pushed statehood, they were the people that were imported basically into the time of our territory of Hawaii, which was completely illegitimate and illegal, with the president who was Dole at that time. You know, and we hear all kind of stories about Dole, you know, but when we look at our historical situation with our vote, everything was stripped from us. And how they did that is they stripped our vote. You know, even at the same time, the 1887, the Bayonet Constitution, where they really began to infiltrate the U.S. laws here in Hawaii and bringing this consciousness here, and all the Chinese couldn't vote. The people couldn't vote anyway. So the people within the United States context, they knew that if they can control the vote in the political system, then they can control our trajectory. And they really began introducing that. Our people really, in essence, a lot of the times in those eras, we really didn't even, we knew the truth. So we didn't believe in even having a chance to vote. But our queen also encouraged us to use the Hawaiian vote in order to reclaim who we are as Kanaka and our country of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And so today we have a huge movement, and we are riding a wave that is carrying a lot of momentum to be able to create and to shift this whole system. And that's why, it's a pivotal time with COVID and, a global economic collapse, the shifts within our political systems all around the planet, the currency changes, everything that is taking place, which when you're speaking of COVID, that's just the catalyst of being able to kick all of these things off, because our whole system our global economic system is enslaving the masses, and everybody knows it. And so everybody's waking up, these shifts are taking place, and everybody that was a part of this coup of control, is getting taken down. And so the Hawaiian vote is so important now. And I'm so happy and honored to see all of our people. Yes, we're all getting educated, but we're mobilizing. And so we actually have a march to the polls August 8th.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we actually have a march to the polls so that all of our people can really, the people in the government can hear the voice of the Hawaiian community, because it's been very clear over the past year, especially after making 1 year anniversary of our protest up at the Mauna. So we're all coming together, bro.
Nice. So you see March to the Polls. How is that affecting you guys with the mail-in ballots and closing all the polls?
Yeah.
So there's like 2 polls that are going to be open, right?
Yes, 100%. And so we're, all the leaders that are in our community on every single island are actually hosting a lot of, including the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, they're actually hosting a lot of educational series about how to go to vote, because they're changing this whole voting system into like a mail-in voting system. And I really see it as it's a strategy to halt this power. And so we have to give that education, give that information to our people, so our people know what to do, how to approach it, and just take action. Yeah. But, it doesn't matter how we vote if we don't know who to vote for. And so it's a great thing about our party and all of the people that are Hawaiian patriots, Aloha Aina Oia'i'o, who are on the ballots. And so our people are being able to see these names that are going into the Office of Hawaiian Affairs on every single island, see the names of the candidates for mayor, seeing the names of these people that we are aiming to make changes. But our people, a big reason why our people didn't vote, if we didn't really have anybody to vote for.
Yeah.
And so now that we have people to vote for, it's pretty transformational. And I was asked to get into the political, this whole campaign a few months ago from each of the founders and the people that are on our council in the Aloha Aina Party. And I actually decided to, if there's any time to run, it's going to be now. I'm going to put everything to the side and run. And I actually decided to do a mayoral campaign. But I headed to the office to put in all of my information and all of my paperwork to file. And there's an age requirement. I'm 26. You have to be 30.
Yeah.
So, but it's beautiful because our next election is in 4 years and I'll be 30. So I'll be doing probably like a mayoral campaign in 2024. So we'll see how that goes.
You think you're ready for mayor?
It gives me 3 to 4 years to get ready.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it definitely does. And I like that, that you have goals set up like that, for the far future. I think too many Native Hawaiians here growing up, wherever you're growing up, just don't have the mental ambition to do stuff. They have these roadblocks that are set up by other people that have put roadblocks in front of them.
Yes.
That they can't do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be this, you can't be that. You can't go into politics.
There's plenty limitations put on us.
Limitations. Yes. And in this day and age with social media, with the ease and access of YouTube and stuff like that, it's like, no, that's not an excuse anymore. Like, you have the ambition to do that. You have the ability to do that. If you have a smartphone,
all the resources to do so.
Right. Go out there and do it. Yes. No. Don't stop making excuses.
Oh, brother, like 100%. And it also plays a part of why I take huge responsibility in being a culture healer, and in essence, a kahu or kahuna in our generation is because even before people can even step into that realm of being able to activate and to mobilize, we really need to get healed. Our pain and our trauma, this idea of us as Kanaka, being like a limited people and all the stigmas put on us, that's all systematic. That happened within our educational system when our people couldn't speak our language. We couldn't practice culture. We were robbed of our cultural identity and all of our other parts of our identity, like our country and our whole idea of us being the most literate people on the planet, from going in 50 years to being the most illiterate people in our own islands, and so all of these is a part of the historical plate that we need healing. And so this whole, in the mission of Hawaiian Kingdom Health, it's extremely important to start there. Our people, hey, if you get stabbed and stitch that bugger up immediately, even if it's just a pinhole and it continues to get irritated and causes infection, it kills the whole organism. And so we need to really pinpoint what are the pains within not only our culture's history and our country's history, but what is the pains within my ancestral line? Who do I come from? And the karmic effects of all the decisions of my ancestors. And so we individually as Kanaka need to go within, have to know our genealogy once more, which we're all kicking off, have to get reestablished in who we are as Kanaka, as Hawaiian nationals, understand our history, and that really takes a long process of healing, of education, and that will lead to emancipation of our own minds. And emancipate yourself from mental slavery.
Little Bob Marley.
Yes, yeah. It's all a part, the emancipation of our own selves, and so we're in that process of doing that, and it's a beautiful thing, and that's why I call it the Kanaka awakening. And so our people are awakening at pretty rapid amounts, but we have to make sure that as we're awakening and rising, we also stay grounded.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What is the biggest barrier you see for middle-aged Native Hawaiian people in today's world?
The biggest barrier, which it really depends on the situation and on the context. A lot of the people that are in my age range, who are a millennial, being from 24 up to around 35, in our generation, we are the first era of Kanaka who have been exposed to these things, because I started to go to school when they just brought computers into school. They just introduced this new information, and the IT space began to really expand. But our biggest barrier, I would say, is our parents' generation. So our parents' generation, who was the baby boomers, the first generation, or the last one that really had all the benefits of this imperialistic system. You just go to school, you go to college, you get a good job, you get great pay. Hey, you get a good watch at the ending of the you get 35 years of working, and then you're all good and you can live off your retirement. That system is done. It's not working. Like we have half of senior citizens still working because they can't afford to pay their rent because their pension is not paying them.
And that's not just for Native Hawaiians. That's for everybody. That's everybody.
That's for everybody. And so we are at the forefront now in our generation to actually see that. And as a Kanaka who has amazing parents who did all they could do to make it, an awesome experience for all of their children, like I have amazing parents as a majority of Kanaka who work hard, a construction worker, a person that works in the government, who does all they could to get the funding to put their kids into proper education. I was private school my whole life, including my 3 siblings, and so although like the 2 of my parents, they earned a really good income, we still struggled because the consciousness was not 100% there. And it was ultimately because they didn't really have any root in who they were as Kanaka. And so now I'm like the black sheep of my family coming out and reintroducing culture, reintroducing this. And at the same time as all of this movement of technology, information coming out, people are learning at mass amounts. Today, our biggest obstacle is being able, I believe, is to not only be aware of the process that our parents went through, but to also understand that we have the capability and the resources to create a new future for us that can benefit us and our children in a way that is collective, and is unified, and it's not based on individualism. And so like I'm building all kind of different projects with eco villages, and we're trying to help our people to live like how our kupuna did, so we don't have to rely. Our biggest thing in the US is we are dependent. We are economically dependent, and they made it that way, you know, so that 85% of our goods are imported so that we can never eat without them. And so they control the food source, they control everything. So when we begin to get economically independent, then we can really begin to stand on our own. But before we even get to that, we have to accept the fact, and our parents and all the parents who are in their 40s and up, they also have to realize that.
Whoa.
that
40 ain't that old.
Mid 40s. I like that. That we are all we have to work together to make the change. The tough part about it is that after you've created the life that potentially worked for you and you're okay with it, it's very, very difficult to change. And so I'm not saying that like our parents are the hindrance, but it plays a role, and it's the consciousness that we are working on and have to pretty much unlearn and relearn what our kupuna taught us, you know. And so it's a beautiful path to walk, but it's also a challenging one, but it's extremely fulfilling after we get over it.
Yeah. And I like that point of view, how you're talking about your parents or the prior generation being a barrier. Because for me personally, it's always been somebody telling me that I can't do this or that I should do this, which is not necessarily the thing that I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you could just take up this podcast, or you take up my side business where, you know, I created stuff, got patents on stuff. I mean, I was told that I couldn't do that and I shouldn't do that and be wasting my time.
Yeah, and yet, the closest people in your life tell you that.
And yet here it's been successful.
Yes.
And, you know, I'm going to continue that with, you know, a show like this. You know, wherever it goes, I'm going to continue to make it better. And it's just the start of doing that. And the naysayers and everything like that are in your mind. And the biggest one is yourself, right?
Yes.
You're the one that's always saying that you can't do something, you can't do this, you can't do that, or that you shouldn't do this, you should play the safe game. It's like, life ain't safe.
No, 100%, brother. You know, we hear those things from the closest people in our life, like all of our lives. You know, we hear those things like it's limiting beliefs. And so because we get to hear that all the time, like a freaking record player, and as we go through that process and we're like living and we want to do something, that's the record playing in our paradigm. And so it takes us to be able to unlearn that and to go through the process to say, you know what, who the hell are you to tell me I cannot do something?
Bingo.
You know, and yet to have grace at the same time to say, you know what, they only saying that because they grew up in a generation where you really couldn't be a free thinker. Mm-hmm. You know, you couldn't be innovative. You rarely meet people that are millennials that are pretty limiting. You know, our people, we you know, especially the kids that are in high school right now, they are doing things that our parents could only dream of, and they're doing it in high school, and like their parents couldn't do it in their 50s. You know, and so being able to undo the limiting beliefs and reintroduce new principles and beliefs that can help us to transcend those limiting beliefs in a way that is loving and graceful and truthful and not based on ego and personal ambition. You know, we got to help out everybody, and it's not really an option. Yeah.
Yeah. Like starting a business in 2020, starting a business is far, far easier than it was in the 80s and the 90s.
100%.
And there's almost no excuse not to. Like, you know, I hear the word privilege being thrown around a lot. Mm-hmm. And in my point of view, if you have a smartphone that's connected to the internet, you have all the privilege in the world
100%.
Right there.
Yes.
You're just making excuses of why you can't do this or you can't do that. You have all the knowledge of human history in the palm of your hand,
100.
In your pocket.
Yes.
And you're connected to everybody on the planet. So it's like, why can't you do something?
Yeah. I think I heard a speech from Tony Robbins where he was stating that the kids of today in Africa who have a smartphone have the same access to information as the president of the United States in the 90s and the 2000s, or even today. They have access to everything.
Oh yeah.
You know, but you see, even that can be a limitation because in our parents' generation, they didn't have any information accessible that easily. And today we have too much information.
True.
And so in the words of Uncle Denzel Washington, he goes, hey, if you watch the news, you're misinformed. If you don't watch the news, you're uninformed. And so it takes ourselves to be able to educate our own in a way that is truthful and be able to sift through all of the information that is present in order to identify what we want to utilize and apply into our life. And if we don't do that, then you take full responsibility for that. Opportunities are all there for you. But if you don't take that step, brother, it's on you. No blame anybody. So if you like be homeless or you like do anything, or you get into trouble, the first step of being a Kane, first step of being a chief, first step of being a good human is you must take full responsibility for every decision you make. And when you do that, you actually give yourself your own personal power outside of another person having the power over you.
All right. So one of your other videos you were talking about, and this kind of diverts from what we were talking about earlier, but you made mention about how you feel that in the public school system, the Hawaiian language should be mandatory. And when I first saw that, I was like, what? No, you can't. You can't teach everybody the Hawaiian language here in Hawaii and make it mandatory. But the more I thought about it and try to see it from your point of view and see it from an outside point of view, I was like, wait a minute. Oh no, we have like all the street names here, most of the street names here, they're Hawaiian. A lot of the names here are Hawaiian. The politicians, when they're on TV, they're using, Hawaiian words and stuff like that. It's like, okay, people don't know the meanings of all of those. Yes. They don't know how to say a lot of those. Like, oh my God, I'm from Hawaii and I have a Hawaiian name, and people who are from Hawaii grew up here, they still mispronounce my name.
Yes.
It's like, okay, now I can kind of see. It's like maybe not engaging and making everybody speak Hawaiian, but having kind of an introductory into the Hawaiian language where they teach the students, the basis of the words, the pronunciations of the words, the breakdowns of the words, how to actually pronounce them. Yes. Like, is it Hanaumabe or is it Hanaumabe? I don't know. Yes. Is it Molokai or is it Molokai?
Yes.
Yeah,
brother, it's a powerful thing, as we begin to also continue to look back. Yeah, our concept of kawa mahope, in the Hawaiian dictionary, it means future, but in transliteration, the term kawa mahope means the time of the past. Yeah, because our future, how us as Kanaka see the future is we look towards the past, and so as we see that our people were the most literate people on the planet for over 50, 60 years in the Hawaiian Kingdom, 1880s, our newspapers coming out, 125 issues of newspaper coming out almost every week, like a lot of things happening, in terms of literacy. And then to see that within, the next 50 years to go from, a huge populace of people who were Kanaka and non-Kanaka speaking Olelo Hawaii, which almost every Portuguese person in the Hawaiian Kingdom, every immigrant that was coming in, everything was in Olelo Hawaii. So everybody was speaking Hawaiian. Yeah, and so it was in that video, I was encouraging the expansion of the awareness of our language. The important thing about our language is that, and even though I'm not pure and fluent speaker just yet, I've had to learn, just like every one of us. There's nobody in my ohana who I know of that is in our immediate ohana that speaks Olelo Kanaka outside of our tutu, who is Kavelino Onapua, the Freitas Mahaulu, the Freitas. Her first language was Olelo Hawaii, grew up Haleiwa, half Hawaiian, Portuguese, but she looked like an Asian lady. Oh, I love my granny so much. And she didn't teach her children Olelo Hawaii because the educational system, they didn't encourage the children to come home and speak Olelo Hawaii. Not only that, but if you spoke Olelo Hawaii in class, then you would get beaten for it. Yeah, that was a part of the process of Americanization on our people, to indoctrinate our people into the American way of life. You pledge allegiance every single day in school, you do all of those things, and you stand up at a football game, even to this day, you pledge allegiance to the United States and you put your hand on your heart, but when Hawaii Pono'i, the anthem of your kingdom comes on, you take your hand off your heart subconsciously. Yeah, you don't even know you're doing it. Yeah, and so, being able to reintroduce our language to our people at a young age, in terms of DOE schools, I believe it's crucial because of the philosophy that it unlocks. Yeah, to be able to understand our language, it gives you a key and a gateway to understanding the Hawaiian worldview that is indigenous and uniquely Kanaka. Doesn't exist anywhere on the planet. It's because Hawaii is unlike any other place on the planet.
Right.
And so, if you have people that are coming here, that or who are in the school system, preschools, being able to expose them to those, to that teaching of just understanding how to pronounce and how to express, and what does these two words, when you put them together, mean, but when you take them apart, these two words individually mean.
Right.
Oh, now you really understand the meaning of that. Like, a good example of that is, of course, aloha. When a lot of people speak of aloha, they, of course, say, oh yeah, love, or hi and bye. But aloha, two words, there's alo and there's ha. And alo is face, but it is also presence. It's being in the presence of. Ha, of course, the breath of life, the exchange of life, but ha, the breath of life, it also implies that it is the essence of life, because without breath, you are not there. So meaning, when you have no breath, you are dead. So you must be your breath, so that when you die, your breath leaves you, your spirit leaves you. So you are not your body, you are what inhabits the body. And so the action of aloha is our exchange of a honi, when you have a greeting of a face-to-face, alohe alo, face-to-face, exchanging of your ha, exchanging of your life force, exchanging of your mana. That right there is the expression of unconditional, true, authentic, and compassionate love. Agape love, that is not limiting, it's liberating. That's what aloha is. And so just one thing, just like that, you can teach a whole lesson on. Then people can really understand, oh, that's what aloha is. Oh, being fully transparent and feeling, being fully open and accepting and embracing. It's not just the kind you're going to enter into a place, oh, aloha, hi, bashi bashi, which is all good, but a majority, and I took some time being a tour guide in a tourism company, and a majority of the tour guides, they don't even know this stuff.
Right.
And so how can they impart it upon anybody accurately and truthfully if they don't know it? And so to reinstate the language, it'll also give us an unlocking to our history and all the figures of history that these streets are named after. And it gives you a pinpoint and an understanding of the stories that took place in that area. Like Kohe Lepe Lepe. When people hear Kohe Lepe Lepe, they go, where the hell is that? But everybody hikes Kokohead. But the mana is in the Olelo. It's in the Kohe Lepe Lepe name, not in Kokohead. If you go to the crater that is on all the postcards that everybody knows as Diamond Head. The actual name is Le'ahi, but Lai'ahi, and it unlocks the story of that place. Like, what does that mean? It intrigues people. So when you're speaking about Kohe Lepe Lepe and you're like, oh, it comes back to a whole story of Pele and Kamapua'a and Kapo, and how she was like a goddess of fertility, and Kamapua'a was aiming to get into Pele, and she didn't want it, so she called her sister who had a flying kohe. A kohe is the vagina, that could fly to Oahu, and it landed on this mountain that looks like in the shape of the lips of the vagina, and that's why it's named Kohe Lepe Lepe, which means the lips of the vagina.
Why is that so funny, Miss?
No, but you see, these stories are so important to remember, that when we can learn the language, even if it's at a basic level, it'll help you to expand your consciousness. That's what it comes down to. And how are you going to connect to a land and prosper it if you're not in the same consciousness of the people that prospered it for 2,000 years? Like if you're going to bring an outside consciousness to this amazing abundant land and expect it to be in union with each other, when on your consciousness of your continent, you're all about money, all about greed, all about business. And when you come here, you bring that here. And it's an invasive species. And that's what I call people that enter into our land and try to take over and do things without entering into a person's house and taking off your slippers first. Those small things, hemokalipa, you take off your slippers before you enter into a person's house. That's proper etiquette of Kanaka, but it makes sense. You keep what's outside, you bring what's inside. You take your slippers, you leave them outside, but it teaches you a principle that when you're coming into another person's house, you give honor before you do anything. You ask permission. You say please and thank you. So every time I go into the beach, I enter into Aina, I enter into another person's home. I do not only bring offerings, but I extend the hand of grace to just be able to just give them a pure mahalo for being able to have me there. That's how you build relationship. You don't build relationship through imposing your own consciousness on another person. You build relationship through acceptance. And so our Kanaka knew that. Yet our aloha and continuous aloha has been mistaken for so long as being a weakness of our people, because we are all about unity. And so this invasive outside consciousness comes in and tries to divide us and tries to trick and educate us that the way that we live is not proper, because it's a capitalistic world, dog eat dog world, and everybody's individualistic. Well, good luck being a human. Because if you continuously be like that with us being communal beings, if you continue being like that, then humanity, our existence is really, really short-lived. You know, we have to really, really be careful about how we conduct ourselves in our relationships. And when you know Olelo Hawaii, and when you teach your children Olelo Hawaii, especially when they're Kanaka, when you teach Kanaka Olelo Hawaii, and they begin to know their kupuna, it's like, bruh, it's like you can't give anything else, bruh. You know, if you give them the tools to build the house, you give them the tools, and you understand how to utilize the tools, and you enable them through inspiration and empowerment through education, then they can learn to build their house on their own. Hey, you teach, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. The consciousness is what matters. Yeah, and so bringing that into our educational system is of utmost importance, I believe. Like, I come from Papakolea, and so all the people in Papakolea, they usually attend. If they attend Hawaiian immersion, they go to Halau Kumana, which is close. But if they go to a public school, they usually go, well, they start elementary at Abraham Lincoln Elementary.
Yep. Lincoln, and then
Stevenson.
And then Roosevelt.
And then Theodore Roosevelt High School. Yeah, which is all good, you know. But as you begin to really understand, like, why, what does a United States president have anything to do with Hawaiian history? It's a proof of the effort to indoctrinate. Yeah, as you go around, you go to Waikiki and you see an elementary school that is named after President Thomas Jefferson Elementary School, you know, and you head to McKinley, who is the man that, you know, spearheaded the illegal annexation of the Hawaiian Islands, and it never did happen, you know. And you look at these things, and it feeds this collective consciousness of our conflict with the United States and our history.
And I mean, they're changing the name of the Washington Redskins. So,
yes, they're changing the names.
Let's start here too.
Yeah, I think a lot of these things are shifting, and so I'm actually speaking to a handful of people to kick off a campaign to really begin to not only to propose a name change to DOE, but to offer a full branding package of what that looks like.
Nice. Yeah, offering solutions.
Yeah, full package. You know, this is why. And if they have any questions, we will be more than happy to hold a press conference and give them the history of who this person is and why it could potentially be a better option to have this change of the name and the branding long term. It promotes a new consciousness. It brings our people together. They get to know their home, and they really begin to reinstate this understanding of our patriots. We've never known our patriots, bro. They have been buried in history because nobody in the United States wanted them to live. So they bring in their own patriots. Yeah, but our patriots are one of the most significant people in our history. Iusepa Navahi, William Punohu White, you know, these people, and Kuhio Wilcox, you know, bringing these names back into our collective consciousness so that we know our own history. Our history was eradicated from us, you know, and even though we can accept that, oh, that's an unfortunate thing. Yes. Well, now that we know how unfortunate it is and how unjust it was, I think it's a proper time in our existence to now begin to propose a solution that can help everybody.
Yeah, it's time to start the correction process.
Yeah, start the correction. And it's happening all around the planet.
Yeah.
And so we might as well ride this wave and steer the boat,
right.
You know, because if nobody's going to steer this boat on our land, like how I explained to a lot of the people that come to Hawaii and that are not from Hawaii, but they claim stake here. I go, brother, if our culture had been put in a place where we are heavily threatened by a pandemic, a war, a bombing, are you going to be the first on the line to stand for your people? Or are you going to have to think about it because you have some stuff to lose. Is Hawaii your ultimate priority, or is it yourself? Yeah. And so as we look at those things, like, brother, there's nothing on this planet that I would die for before Hawaii. Yeah. And I make sure to instill that in all the guys that I mentor. You know, as a Kanaka, that's your duty, that's your origins. You know, but when you don't know your origins and you just treat Hawaii as, you know, oh, I gotta get off this rock, and you go Las Vegas. Cool, you can go Las Vegas all you like.
I did.
Yeah, you know, and yet it's clear evidence that it's not always clear to the individual of the historical trauma that took place on you and your family. When you look back at our historical figures in our Aloha Aina, you see evidence of men who are Kanaka and non-Kanaka who love their Aina. You know, this concept of being an Aloha Aina, bro, like you love everything about your land and you will give your life for your land. You know, and so we end in our anthem that a majority of people, they don't really know the whole song, you know, because our anthems are based on just the first verse. But Hawaii Pono'i was actually it was commissioned, in closing, of course. It was commissioned by Kamehameha the Fifth. Lota liho liho kapuaiwa kalani ma kua pai kalani nui Kamehameha. Yeah, the grandson of Kamehameha the First. His nickname is the last chief of old. Because he had the consciousness of his papa. He realized the invasion that was taking place really slowly by these outside forces. They were coming in and they were just making moves politically, making moves in business to really get an upper hand to eventually be able to turn this over to their own self-interest. Yeah, and he was a pivotal king in his time. And when he took the throne, you know, he did a lot of things. He was a revolutionary. But he knew that he needed to bring his people all under one anthem, because the anthem can be a battle cry for our people of who we are, yeah, and to stand in what is righteous. And so he commissioned young Kavika Kala Kaua, who was an ali'i, who would eventually become King Kala Kaua, to compose this mele. And Hawaii Pono'i, to this day, like if I'm at a football game or if I'm anywhere that they're gonna play the Star Spangled Banner and Hawaii Pono'i, I've come to this point in my consciousness where I don't ever pledge allegiance to the United States. And it's not because I don't like the United States or I'm dishonoring it. I'm just honoring my country. And the United States I know in terms of history, fact, and legally. This has never been our country. And that's a tough thing. Like when I speak to HPD cops, like I spoke to a few of them at a couple of our protests, and I asked them, hey, I have a gift for you if you can answer this question. They go, okay, what? Who is the founder of Honolulu Police Department? And they go, it was King Kamehameha the First. I go, A'ole. And they go, what? I go, A'ole. It was Kamehameha the Third. Yeah. And so it's that evidence that even our police that are on the front lines, they aren't always connected to the story.
Well, they were close.
Yeah, close. You know, yet he's our first police chief. Yeah. You know, and so to understand the story of Kauike'ole and how significant he was, and July 31st is coming up in about a week and a half, and July 31st is La Ho'ihoi'ea. It was an event where Admiral Thomas of the English Admiralty came and reinstated Kauike'ole, King Kamehameha III, to his position as king, because a few months earlier he was overthrown illegally. Our first overthrow. There's two overthrows that took place in Hawaiian history, but we weren't independent at that time. And so at July 31st, you know, he gave a speech at Pu'uaina Barracks, which is Punch Bowl, and it was then that he proclaimed the kingdom model, not the state model, the kingdom model. The ea, the independence, the authority, the rulership, and the liberation, the freedom of our land is perpetuated when we do what is right, when we do what is just. Because that was an unjust overthrow and he knew, so he trusted in what was right because he was a godly man. Yeah, and so when we speak of Hawaii Pono'i, you know, and our people sing it, it's such a powerful thing when you know what it means and when you know the history. That's where you unlock the mana. So, Hawaii Pono'i, Hanu. Hanu.
Elijah McShane, thank you so much, bro. It's been good.
Mahalo. Hawaii pono I nana I komoi kalani ali ke ali makualani e kameha meha e na kaua e pale me ka ihe Hawaii pono I nana I nali na pua muliko na poki makualani e kameha meha e na kaua e pale me ka ihe Hawaii pono I e kalahui e no ka uhana nui e ui e makualani e kameha meha e na kaua e pale me ka ihe makualani e kameha meha e na kaua e pale me ka ihe E o ke au pune o Hawaii pai aina. Kanaka Awakening. Check it out.
Hawaii real, everybody. Stay happy.
Mahalo.